Hey guys, today we're going to be doing the start of a video series, and this video series is going to be a tutorial along the lines of building an iOS application using Swift 3, which is the newest iteration of Swift, which is Apple's development language for iOS. We'll be using the Xcode software, which is provided with OS X, which you can download from the App Store. I'm using version 8.1, which is, as of now, the latest version you can get on the App Store. This application is essentially going to be a very basic and generic application that allows you to download news from an API or download news from the internet and display it on an iOS device. This will allow your users to view these news articles and they'll be able to share it, etc., etc. These features may be added in later videos. It's going to be a series. This video is most probably going to be a setup video. And I'll talk you through getting a few API keys and stuff like that, explain the initial code to you, and try and get you familiar with the environment. Okay, so this is kind of intended for people who are looking to either build a brand new iOS app from the start and don't know Swift. So I am going to try and teach the fundamentals. If you already know Swift and you've already built a few iOS apps, this probably isn't going to be from you. But we are going to go from A to Z in building an iOS application. And the application will be the one that I just mentioned, which is going to be a news application. This is not scripted at all. I have no script. I have no keys or anything. Nothing has been made before you've watched this video. So what I'm going to do is going to be completely from the scratch, exactly how I'd start from the bottom up, as if I was doing it as my job. If you're looking to get into this as a career, these are the kind of things you'd expect to go through. I'll be teaching you to interact with REST web services, JSON, and manipulating that. So you'll learn quite a lot in this series, hopefully. So that's the explanation over. I'd like to also apologize if my microphone sounds a bit loose. I will be getting a new one, so if the voice sounds a little bit better during the series, you'll know when I've got my new microphone. Okay, so we're going to get started, and if you've got OS X, you can open up Xcode. And Xcode is this application here. If you've not got it, go to the App Store and search Xcode. It's really easy to find. You'll be able to find it with no problem. Once you got it, you can kick it up, and you'll be introduced to this. We're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new Xcode project. And we're going to select a single view application just because this provides us with a very basic backbone for your iOS application. So if I select this one, we'll give it a product name and fill in these details here. The product name will be news app, okay? Team, none's fine for now. You don't need that to test your application. Organization name, whatever your organization may be, you can call it what you want. Organization identifier, this is normally a reverse domain. So let's say you own myapp.com. An organization identifier will typically be .com.myapp.ios, and that's just the way it's typically done in a lot of environments. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this that organization identifier. Languages, we're going to be using Swift. Devices for now, I'm just going to look it down to iPhone. If you're looking to build an iPad app, it's not much different, honestly. You just got to take into consideration, obviously, the screen size is a lot bigger, so look after that. This app's going to be portrait only as well, just kind of to simplify. We're going to go ahead. We're not going to use any of these, although I strongly recommend learning unit testing and UI testing. It's very important. But for simplicity of this tutorial, we're going to kind of ignore these and move on. Okay, so I'm going to create this on my desktop. And you're presented with kind of an intimidating screen if you never worked Let's Go, and you're going to be a bit confused by what all of this is. So I'm not going to go through this entirely. If you've not got an Apple account, if you're not looking to push the app to the App Store yet or anything, this is fine. You can leave the signing. Deployment info is fine as well. My deployment target is typically 8. I like supporting devices that are on 8 and above. That'll probably move up to 9 in the near future. But anyway, we're going to set up on 8. Devices iPhone. We're going to remove this main interface here. We're going to get rid of this. Make sure you delete this. I'm going to untick these because we're going to only support portrait for now. I'm going to go further down here, and that's fine. We'll go with that for now. I want you to right click this main storyboard. I want you to delete it. And when you're in the iOS world, if you're talking to a lot of different iOS developers, the general consensus is that 50% of those developers will say that they like storyboard and the others will not. I'm on the side of the fence where I don't like storyboards, okay? I appreciate the value of them, and what a storyboard is essentially when you are in a storyboard, it allows you to design your application visually. So you're able to kind of just drag buttons in here and drag labels in here. So if I go ahead and I look for a button, you can literally just drag it in, place it somewhere. You can add your constraints to make sure it sticks to the center and whatnot. And you can see it'll stay there no matter what screen size is. And it's all appealing, sure, and it's a nice way to do it. However, when you're starting to build complicated UI, or if you're working in a team, it quickly becomes a burden. And the reason for this is when Xcode, when you run your application, Xcode turns these storyboards into code, basically XML files. And if you're working in a team and you've changed something in a storyboard, it makes it hell for your team to understand what you have changed. And it just makes it extremely difficult. So what I like to do is I like to use a framework, which is code other people have created, to build these views programmatically in a very easy and very understandable manner. And I'll show you this later. But for now, I'm going to back out of creating this button. We'll leave the launch screen as it is. And the launch screen is basically just the screen that pops up when your application first launches. Like on Twitter, when you now open the bird expands, that's the launch screen. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and run this on the iPhone 5S and likely encounter an error. If not, that's all good. Okay, so that looks like it's gone ahead and built. Okay, so that means everything's working fine. Okay, so Xcode provides a few files for you off the bat, especially when you choose the single view application template. It's not very well organized. It's one of the pet peeves I have with Xcode, is that I like my folders to be very structured. But for this tutorial, I'm not going to have much structure in this. I'm going to use groups. So when you view your application in the Finder, what you'll see is that they're all just in one place. And I don't like that. I like to have different folders for different things. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and we're going to create everything in Xcode. Okay, so the first file we're going to look at is the app delegate. When you first look at it, if you're not familiar with programming or Swift, it's going to be really intimidating. But I'm going to go through this somewhat line by line. I'm going to go ahead and try and explain what's going on here. Okay, so at the top here, you've got to look up comments. And what these are completely ignored in the application. These are just for you to read. And whenever the application is compiled, they get completely ignored. So you can write whatever you want in here. The only people who are going to see it are you and your team, essentially. And all files kind of come with this header that just says, you know, this is the file name created by this person on this date, and the copyright of your organization to kind of safeguard your IP. Okay, so next line is import UI kit. And what this is doing is importing a framework into your code. And what a framework is it's a bundle of code somebody else has written that they have exported or packaged up and allowed you to use in your application. And UI kit stands for user interface kit, which is kind of Apple's framework for dealing with UI, which is the buttons, the labels that you see, kind of the lists and the scrolling and that kind of stuff. All that's handled within the UI kit. And basically, we import that in, and we're allowed to use these labels, we're allowed to use these things, buttons, whatnot. Okay, so that's how imports work, and that's essentially what it is. And you can ignore this app tag for now. This is basically just it's kind of a Swift tag. I think it's related to Objective-C because all maps were originally written on Objective-C, and there's still compatibility between Swift and Objective-C, so you'll see quite a few references to how Objective-C used to work. And underneath this, you'll see class app delegate. And app delegate is just kind of the powerhouse of your application. Never put a lot of code in here. And the more you can avoid in here, the better, really. But what this is kind of if someone closes the app and presses the home button and goes back into your app, you're notified here. When they first launched the app, this is where you do a lot of the setup. In this method here, did finish launching. This is where you do kind of the initial startup and let's say when they become active and stuff like that. Okay, so that's that. And you'll see this colon and then a few things after it. This colon is basically like a little break there, and it's saying, okay, so I want app delegate to kind of adhere to whatever follows this colon, and I want it to adhere to being a UI responder, which is in the UI kit. And UI responder is it's this in iOS is a thing called a responder chain. When you tap a button, that kind of propagates up this system of a responder chain up to the very top, to the window, to the app delegate, and it basically allows you to catch all the events like pressing buttons and stuff. But that's not too important for now. You're not going to be really seeing that anywhere in this tutorial. And I want to adhere to, well, inherit from this UI application delegate, which I believe is a protocol. Yeah, which we'll go through it at a later time. And what that means is in this UI application delegate protocol, you've got these methods that you can kind of put in your app delegate and override. Well, not override necessarily, but you'll see what I mean later on. So yeah, that's essentially what that means. And a class is basically just, it's hard to explain a class really. It's like a blueprint to some extent. It's hard to understand when we're talking about the app delegate, but a class is basically a blueprint for an object you want to make. So let's say you're making a computer. The app delegate would be the schematics for this computer, the specs for it and stuff. And when you actually go to build that, what you'll build is an object, which we'll get into a bit later on. And these classes have properties here. And a var is a variable. Hopefully you're kind of familiar with the basics of programming, but a variable is basically a value that can change. Okay, so this window, you can put new windows in this variable at any time. It's not going to complain. And if there's another keyword called let, and what that is if I ever try and assign a different value, for example, like if I change value to 2, I'll get a warning saying, or an error saying, you can't change this, you've made it a constant. So let is a way of declaring constants in your code. Alright, so we're not going to go through too much of this. That's it basically, that's all I'm going to cover. The window is kind of just the main screen of your application. It's the very top level of your application. So that's all I'm going to go through. I'm not going to go much further than that with regards to the first initial code, but we know it runs, so that's as far as we're going to go. You'll see this uController code that we've generated here. I'm going to ignore that for now. We're going to delete that because I believe it's not actually important for now. Yay, great. Okay, so we can build this, we can compile it, that's fine. So as I said, what we're going to do is we're going to make a news application. So what we're going to need kind of a news API. I've not done any research on this, so I'm literally going to search for a news API. And I'm going to go for the first one that kind of comes up really. So yeah, okay, we're on newsapi.org, looks pretty nice. It seems like a site that allows you to get news from a load of different sources and display them in your app, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so we're going to get an API key. We're going to create an account here. Okay, I'm not a robot. Oh, my god, all these things. Bloody hell. A storefront. Is that a street zone or a storefront? I'm going to go with storefront anyway. Let's see if that worked. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to tick this box. And if you are going to use this, if you're going to kind of use this API in any public app, you've got to use an attribution link and say, listen, this is powered by newsapi.org. That's all that means. I'm going to go ahead and submit this. So yeah, wow, I'm given an API key instantly. That's brilliant. So I'm going to select this key. And I'm just going to put it in here for safekeeping, so we can use it later on. This is news. Okay, that's nothing important. That's just a comment for me later on. Okay, so this is a very simple website. I don't really know how to navigate this. We're going to go back and we're going to look at the documentation. Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to ignore that for now. And we're going to move on to building the first page of our application. What we're going to do is in this folder here, we're going to right click and click new group. We're going to call this screens. And then we're going to do a new group again. We're going to call this home. And in here, we're going to create a new file, a Swift file, and we're going to call it home view controller. Great, that's fantastic. Foundation is just another import from Apple that provides all the basic functionality. So a lot of the basic types, default types, stuff like that. Not important for now. We're also going to import UIKit, which is where the view controls come from, which we'll talk about now. So we're going to type class home view controller UI view controller. Okay, so that's fine. And what that means is we're creating a class or a blueprint called home view controller, which inherits from the UI view controller class. And a view controller is not too difficult to explain, really. Okay, so a view is what you see on the iOS app when you launch it up. So let's say I launch the Health app. A view is this button here, a view is that button there, you know, all this kind of stuff. Okay, so what a view controller is when you tap a button, let's say we tap activity, you shouldn't have code in that view saying, oh, when I tap you, we need to go to a different page. That view needs to notify the controller, and it needs to say, listen, I've been pressed, I need you to do something because I have no idea of what's happening. A view should not know anything about any other view, really. Essentially, that's how it should work. A view should talk to the controller, and the controller should talk back to the view. And that's how it should really work. There's also a model involved, which is how you structure your data and whatnot. But for now, when we're just trying to explain a view controller, all that is a view controller is a way to kind of interact between views and control them and display data within them and that kind of stuff. Okay, so it's very simple. So the home view controller is basically going to be managing, kind of fetching the news articles. It's going to manage the kind of the table that's going to be there, the list you can scroll through and stuff. And it's just going to kind of download the data and tell the views to update. That's all the view controller really does, in essence. So we're going to go through that now. We're also going to create a view. So we're going to create a new group. And we're going to call this views. And we'll call this, oh no, sorry, no, Swift file, home view. Sorry for the sound of this keyboard, though. It's mechanical and it makes a lot of noise. I apologize for that. So again, we're going to import UI kit. You'll be doing this a lot. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so when I said before that I'm not going to use storyboards, what I am going to use is I'm going to use Snapkit. And it's a really beautiful library that allows you to lay out your views in a very human way. So as you can see here, you make constraints. Constraint is basically a rule for the view. And you say make the size equal to 50 points, and then you say make the center equal to the container. And what that does is, if that's a container, it literally makes the box 50 points or pixels in size, and then it will center it. It's a very easy language. It's very nice to know. Okay, so you'll see that we're going to have to follow the getting started instructions here. And there's Cocoa Pods and there's Carthage. Personally, I'm going to use Carthage because it's something that I kind of advocate and I use a lot. So you're going to follow this, and then we're going to go here. And what you're going to see is it's going to teach you how to install and whatnot, but we're going to use Homebrew just because it's really simple. So we're going to kick open our terminal, and we're just going to do brew install Carthage. And I've already got Carthage, so it might go fetch it, it might not. We'll see what it does. Okay, yeah, so it says Carthage already installed, but you'll go ahead and you'll download that. If you've not got Homebrew, go to brew.sh, where the URL is, yeah, and just copy that into your terminal and then run it and it'll be fine. Okay, and then you'll brew, then you can go ahead and install Carthage. Now we've got Carthage, it's quite simple. We have to make a cart file. So if I go to the news app. Okay, so if I go in here, I just create a cart file. I'm going to copy this in here. Okay, so what that says is it says get this library Snapkit from GitHub. You'll be doing this a lot. You'll be kind of using a lot of libraries most likely in your applications. So it's nice to just understand what's going on here. Carthage uses GitHub as its main provider. Snapkit/Snapkit is the name of the repository on GitHub. And you've got the version specified, and this is just saying use version 3 basically. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save that cart file. Then I'm going to run Carthage update, and you'll see it will start working. Actually, I'm going to cancel that. I'm going to specify that the platform is going to be iOS. It saves a lot of time when you're fetching it and building it and whatnot. So there we go, it's going to build that. We're going to open up Xcode, and then we're going to go into this. And in the embedded binaries, we're going to add Snapkit when it actually gets built. I'm also going to add a frameworks group in here. Okay, so we'll throw that in there, and once Carthage has done its job, you go to your directory, into the Carthage folder, build iOS, and there you'll see SnapKit. And we're going to drag that into our frameworks folder here, leave everything as is, and then we're going to also drag SnapKit into this embedded binaries, and we're going to remove one from here. It's a bit of a workaround, but it's fine. So we'll try running that, see what happens. Build succeeded, that's all good. That means we've now got SnapKit in our application. So we're going to go ahead to the screens, we're going to go to home view, and what we're going to do is, for now, we're just going to put a table view in there. Yeah, that's all we're going to do. So we're going to put a table view in there. So there we go. What I've done there is I'm overriding the initialize method for the UI view, and this basically just allows me to put my own initialization code in here. So I recommend just kind of including this code as well. But mainly what we're going to do is we're going to put the code in here. This is where we're going to initialize our code. You don't really need to know the details of this initializing code. Essentially, all you do is kind of put this code in every view you have, or you can make a base view class and base all your smaller views off this, and have the base view class kind of handle a bit of this init stuff, so you don't have to have two methods all the time. But anyway, so this is where we're going to start our kind of our laying out code. So I'm gonna call setup layout, and down here I'm gonna have a nice little comment here saying, you know, this is the layout area, and we're gonna have a func called setup layout. Alright, and a func is literally a function. That's literally all it is. That's as far as I can really go. Is you put something in, you get something out, or you just run it and you get a result. Okay, that's basically how they work. And I'm calling this function from my init method, so because this code will get ran when the view is first created. Okay, so we're gonna create a table view, which if you've seen iOS apps, let me try and find one. There's likely got to be one here. Of reminders, for example. There we go. Definitely got to have a table. Maybe it doesn't. Brilliant. Just what we need. Calendar, do you have a table? Okay, yeah, so you know when you scroll up and down in apps and you see these kind of cells here? This is a table view, okay? So this is a table in iOS terms. And this is where we can display our news articles. So if you can imagine each of these being kind of a news article with a headline, a brief description, maybe a thumbnail, an image on the left or whatever, that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to have this in our application as a table view. So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to do let table view equals UI table view. And that just instantly initializes our table view and makes it constant, so it can't be changed. It's a rule of thumb, really, when you're actually creating UI elements, to make it a constant and just initialize it straight away. It's a nice, simple way of doing it. So in this setup layout, what we're going to do is we're going to do table view .smp. Have I not done this right? Because it should be auto completing. Oh, my word. We're also going to import SnapKit, which is this framework we included earlier. There we go. And then we're going to type table view .smp .make constraints. Okay. And we're going to make edges equal to the parent. Or you could do, just to make it a bit more understandable, actually no, I'll just throw self in there. Alright, so what this does is SnapKit has extensions to views, so you can actually call this on views. So I've done table view.snapkit.make constraints, and constraints are rules, like I said before, for views. And we just say make the edges equal to this, which is kind of the parent view of that table view, which means that the table view will essentially take over the whole screen. Okay, so that's the basics of this. You might see that it looks a bit weird. I'm not actually calling the method like this, and the reason for that is Swift has a bit of syntactic sugar all over it. So the way you can also call this method is Right, so you can also call a method like this by including this little block inside parentheses, But Swift makes it really nice. If the block is the last parameter, you can actually put it after the parentheses, or if it's the only parameter, you can actually get rid of the parentheses. Sorry, and you can run it like that, and it was a lot neater and a lot nicer. Anyway, so now we've got our table view set up. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to this home view controller. We're going to do you're just going to have to bear with me while I type this. Okay, so this is a bit messy. It may look or appear a bit messy, but all we're doing here is essentially when we need to load the view for the view controller, we're returning an instance of this home view object. And obviously, I said this is a blueprint, and we're creating the object here. So the view controller is basically saying, "Hey, I need to load the view. What are you going to give me?" So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to set the view of this view controller to a new object of home view, which is going to contain this properties table view, and it's also going to have that table view laid out for us, which is really nice. Okay, and then this top bit here is a variable saying home view of type, which is the type home view, and it basically casts the view of the view controller as a home view, which is the one we created. And the reason we need this is because if I type self.view, you'll see it's a UI view, which is kind of the base view of iOS, and it's not automatically going to know that we're using a home view, so that's a bit of a problem. So we have this simple way up here of kind of converting it into a home view object. So if I do self.homeView, it's literally the same as doing self.view, but you get all the properties of the home view, like the table view and whatnot. Okay, so you'll just have to kind of follow me on that one. And I'm sorry this has taken such a long time. I'm trying to be as explanatory as possible in this first episode. In the next videos of the series, it's going to go a bit faster and the pace is going to pick up really fast. I'm going to talk a lot less, and you're just going to see the code being written and kind of follow suit, and hopefully you'll understand more about what's happening. Override is basically this method actually belongs to the UI view controller. So if I go to load view, yeah, so you'll see that it's actually inside the base class of UI view controller. And if you kind of look at these classes, they have a lot of comments on them. It's very well documented by Apple, so I recommend having a look at that. Okay, so that's how we're first initially going to do this. We're going to go into this app delegate now, and then this launch, we're going to say, hey, we need to make this home view controller our main view controller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do okay. Okay, just bear with me while I do this. Okay, hopefully that's all going fine. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm creating an object of this home view controller. Again, this is a blueprint that contains a blueprint of home view, blah, blah, blah. But when I create this object, it's going to go ahead and create the home view controller, which in turn creates the home view, and it kind of kicks off the whole thing. I'm also creating a navigation controller. And what navigation controller is, hopefully Calendar has it, is this top bar here. So you can kind of navigate through the app using this top bar, and it allows you to do a few actions and whatnot. And whatever you click through, this top bar stays the same. Typically it has a title in here and whatnot, and the title of the news article will be in here. So that's what a navigation controller is. Typically a lot of apps are contained in these, and that's the suit we're going to follow. So I'm going to create a UI navigation controller. I'm going to set the root controller of this navigation controller to home view controller, and you can also pop and push views from view controllers. So when you tap that news article, the navigation controller is going to push the news article onto the stack, and it's going to show a different view controller, and you can pop it later when they press the back button. That's the reason. It's kind of just a navigation help. And then this window, the window, as I said before, is kind of the main screen of your application. So we're going to set the root view controller a main screen to the navigation controller. And then this make key invisible function essentially shows the window. Okay, so as you can say, most apps call this to show the main window and also make it key. Okay, so always call this essentially, if you're doing it programmatically, in the did finish launching method. Okay, so that's fine. We're going to go ahead now and see if this works, which hopefully it should. Ooh, or maybe it won't. That's a bit of a problem, isn't it? Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just not showing. Oh, I made a mistake. That's my bad. Strangely enough, though, it doesn't look like the app delegate is being called at all. So now look in here. Okay. So I'm gonna have to look at this and see what's going on. Quite strange. What have I done? So I'm not getting any errors or anything. So maybe it is working. Maybe it's not showing. Well, so I'm just gonna add some quick debug code in here. I'll run that again. And what this will do is, if it successfully loads, it'll just print the word loaded in the console at the bottom right here, which is kind of the terminal of the application. So that's not working at all, which is a bit strange. Bit of a dilemma here. Oh no, I bugged up. That's completely my fault. Okay, so I didn't actually create the window, which is completely my bad. So we're gonna have to create this window, and what this does is it'll create that main screen of the application, and the size of it is going to be this here, which is basically just the bounds of your actual screen of the phone. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and build that, and hopefully now it should work. That was silly on my behalf, my bad. But like I said, this isn't scripted, there's nothing here, this is typical things that we'll go through. And as you can see now, you've actually got a table view that you can scroll through, you can bounce around and whatnot, and it's in this navigation controller, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead now, and this view did, it's actually quite handy that I did this view did load, because in this method, what this is this is called immediately after your view has been initialized, so all the properties are set on it and whatnot. So what we're going to do is we're going to set title. I'm going to call this, I don't know, recent news. And hopefully in that top bar, the navigation controller will pick up the title from the view controller that's in it, and it will display it at the top. So as you can see now, this says recent news, which is fantastic. That's kind of what we're looking for here. And we've got the home view here, which is great. And in here, we're also going to start setting up the table view ready to accept kind of data for the news articles and such. So as you can see, we've got set up table view here, and what this is going to do is going to look at the home view, get that table view we initialized before, and it's going to set the delegate itself. I'm going to do the same for the data source, which I'll explain in a moment, don't worry. Alright, typically I don't do this. I store the delegate and data source in separate files, or in one different file, sorry. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're just going to make the view controller the delegate and the data source for this table view. And a delegate is essentially when you tap one of these cells on the table, the delegate will be notified of this. So we'll go here and we'll just show you what I mean. So I'm going to type extension. Oh, my bad. That's silly of me. Okay, so as you can see here, I've added an extension to this home view controller, and I want this extension to kind of adhere to the UI table view delegate protocol, which contains a few methods such as table view did select row, index path, and that means when I tap this, this delegate has a method in it that says, yes, I have tapped this, and now I'm going to tell you what's been tapped, and you need to do something with this. Okay, so if I start typing table view, there's a lot of methods here. Don't be overwhelmed. Just the only one we're looking at is this one here for now, and you'll see that the method is table view did select row at index path, and if we look at index path, it has a row. And what that is essentially, if I tap this top one here, this method will be fired, and it will say table view did select row at index path, and the row value of this will be 0. So that's how we know the first one was tapped, and that's how we get the second one, third one would be 1, 2, etc., etc. In program languages, everything starts from 0 basically, so this row is not 1, it's 0. That's just how everything works in programming, essentially. Okay, so there's a lot of other methods as well, so like the height of the height for the rows. Like, so if I go ahead and I return 70 for this, you'll see the change instantly. So we'll go ahead like that. You'll see that the rows get a lot bigger. Well, clearly it didn't actually. It's whoops me. Oh, actually that's my bad. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so let's say I've set this height for row index path. Let's set that to 110. That's completely fine. Then we need to set a data source as well. Okay, so you can imagine what we're going to do now. We're going to create another extension. You don't have to create an extension. You can actually add these up here. But for every different protocol, I tend to create an extension. It just kind of keeps the code a lot neater. An extension is not a different class. It's the same class. It's just a set of methods that you can add to that class to give it different functionality. And I normally include the other protocols in this class. It just keeps a lot more organized for me, okay? So we're going to look at the number of rows in section. I'm just going to return 10 for now. Keep it quite simple. This is all going to be dynamic. Oh, sorry. There's also required methods in this protocol I'm going to have to check out. Alright, so we need that one, and we need self a row. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to teach you this one before we can actually run the app and see the effects. So I'm going to kind of ignore that now and do a dirty hack just so we can, see the cells change and make sure there are 10 on the screen. So now there should be 10 cells of big size. There we go. And I can scroll through 10 cells that are 110 pixels high, or 110 points high. Right, so the delegate has basically said, okay, I need you to tell me what the height of this row is at this index path. And it'll return the numbers for whatever you specified in here. So I specified 10 rows, so this is going to ask for each one of those heights. And the number is going to be dynamic, because obviously we're going to be downloading different news articles from the internet. So we're going to have different numbers of rows. That's going to be dynamic. That'll change. The cell itself, I'll go through this later. The height we can change dynamically as well. For now, we're going to stick with around, actually 110 seems pretty reasonable. Actually, we're going to keep that. I'm going to keep that value. It's actually pretty nice because we need to show a thumbnail, a title, and a description. And did select row index path. So I just go ahead here and print index path.row. What you'll see, what you'll see is if I tap the top one, it'll say 0. Tap that one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You get the gist, okay? And that was 10 different cells starting from 0. Okay, so it's all working. We've actually got the app all hooked up here, which is pretty cool. And what we can do as well is I'm just going to show you something really quickly. This isn't the way you should ever initialize table view cells. It's really inefficient. I'm just going to write some boilerplate code. I will go through all this code afterwards. I'm just writing all this code now to show you what you can kind of get done with the very basics, so you can actually see results in your application fast. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm initializing a cell and then I'm setting the text inside that cell to cell whatever the number is, and then I'm returning it. So what you'll see here is, oh look, we've already got content in these cells, and now you can start, hopefully you can start seeing kind of you know, getting a gist of what's going to happen. And so this is going to be a news article, cell 0 here. We're going to have a thumbnail left, title, thingamajiggy, and when you tap it, what's going to happen is it's going to push that news article onto this stack. Okay, so we'll create that news page later on, and it'll display that news article. But for now, I think we've got a good foundation to go off, and it's doing quite well. So, yeah, I think that's kind of good for now. So I'm going to explain the code, and then I'm going to end this video. And then in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to actually create these cells, make them look like good news articles, and then we're going to get the API key, and we're going to download these news articles. So it's going to be a lot more interesting than this one. This one was a very boilerplate one. I'm sorry for the slowness of this article, this video, but it's going to be a lot better. It's going to progress a lot faster from now on. I'm going to explain this bit of code, and then we'll call it a day. Okay, so this extension I've already explained to you is just a way to organize your code essentially and add new functionality to the home view controller. Okay, the UI table view data source is kind of similar to Delegate in the way that the table view asks you for the data. So what it's going to say is that table view is going to ask this, and it's going to say, hey man, I need to know the number of rows that I have so I can display them. And you're going to return however number of rows. So here we're saying there's 10. So it's obviously gone ahead and it's created 10 rows for us and it's displayed them. And it's also going to say, I'm going to need to know what you want in these cells, and I'm going to need to know what they look like. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a cell. This is the wrong way. I'll show you in the next episode kind of how to actually create one properly. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to create this cell, and we're going to set the text to whatever's in this. We're going to set the text to whatever we want. So for this is where we'd kind of say, set the article name for this, set the thumbnail to this, and set the description to this. And then we're going to return that cell, and it's going to go ahead and display that for us. And there's a lot more than it asks you to give it. It asks you to give it a lot of data. It's quite cheeky like that. So you get title for headers, you got the estimated heights and all that kind of stuff. It's crazy the amount of stuff you can actually put in here. But we're going to stick to the essentials. And then we've got the delegate as I displayed before, which is kind of, it notifies you of the events and stuff, what happened. So if I select this cell, it'll print out what index path row was selected. Index path is just kind of a container, because table rows in iOS can contain sections, so you can kind of section them. You can have a section 0, section 1, have different cells and all that kind of stuff. Index path is just a wrapper. The only thing we're going to care about in this is the row. So as you can see, it's got a section and it's got a row. That's basically all you need to know about this index path for now. It's not important outside of that for this application. So that's just a way of getting the row. So essentially you can just treat index path as a number, which is the row for now. And it's going to say, yeah, I selected this this row in my table view. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to, this is a method where we'll actually push the news article onto our navigation controller, and it'll slide across and it'll show that person that article. And in this table view method here, the height for row index path, I don't know why it asks for this in the delegate. I personally think it should possibly be in the data source, but it asks you for the height, and then you return whatever height you want. You can make these cells dynamic in height and all that kind of stuff. But as we're building, you know, it's going to be kind of a generalized a news article. Is going to have, they're all going to have the same size thumbnail, text next to it, and description. So that's kind of how that's going to work. Hopefully, this has helped you understand the kind of the foundations. I'm going to go through the methods actually dead quickly and explain. You know, oh, what's this underscore? That don't make sense. Why didn't you tell me this, you idiot? Yeah, okay. So sorry about that. So the function is called table view, and this is the first parameter here. Parameters are just values that you pass into functions. So it's passing as a table view. And what it means is this underscore is, I'm going to create a function for us now. My function underscore value main param value 2 int. Okay, so this is a method here that we just created. Okay, so now if I try and call my function, what you'll see is that you can just enter the integer. You don't actually have to enter a name for this parameter. And that underscore basically means you don't have to give this a name. So you can just enter that. So if I go ahead and I actually like look at this table view method we were just looking at, you'll see that I don't have to like type table view colon. I can just enter the table view. So if I do, right, so I can just actually enter the table view, and I don't actually have to enter the name, like the the name of the parameter. So, for example, if I change this underscore to value 1, if I call my function, I actually have to name that parameter as I'm typing the function out. And it's just, the underscore is a nice simple way of ignoring the first method, as typically when you're writing functions, the name of the first method is kind of implied by the function name. So as you're looking here, table view, and then it's a function, and the first thing you pass in is a table view. It makes sense that the first thing you're passing in is a table view, so you don't really need to type out the fact that, you know, this parameter is called table view. So you just you pass in the value. And the second parameter here is section, and the name of it is number of rows in section. So again, if I type my function, you'll see that it says named param, and that's kind of the friendly name of your parameter. Okay, so as you can see here, it's actually called value2. So what I could do is inside that function, I reference it as value2, but outside that function, the name of it is going to be name param. And I believe that if I get rid of it, it will default to making you enter the name value2. So yeah, you can give it a reasonable name here, but if you want to refer to it as something else in your function, then you do want to actually pass in. So value2 is not really a friendly name to understand. So yeah, you can kind of just give it a name like that, and when you're calling the function, you can have actually a parameter it's a friendly name for it. Okay, anyway, so hopefully that gives you a very vague idea, sorry how vague that might be, of how these functions work. So it's a very small foundation. I'm sorry that we're not going to have a chance to get more through, but hopefully you can start to see that with very little code, we're actually getting quite a bit done. If there is anything that I've not gone through properly, just do let me know. Slap my wrist for it, whatever, and I'll continue going through it. But for now, I think we've got through enough. So I'm going to call that a day for now, and in the next video, we'll start actually getting the articles pulled in and displaying them. So yeah, if you've enjoyed the video, if it's actually taught you anything, I'd ask you to subscribe, like the video, share it with whoever you think may be interested. So yeah, thank you for listening and watching, and I will see you in the next episode of this tutorial.